Everyone. Thank you so much for logging on this morning and joining our Positive Parenting Practices QI Learning Collaborative PICCOLO webinar. I really appreciate you all taking time out of your busy schedule to join us. And as a reminder, we are recording this webinar today, so if there are team members that weren't able to join, we will send a recording out shortly after the webinar so that you all are able to share this with other members of your team and also view again for yourself if that's something that you would like to do. That way you have it as a training resource as you move throughout your learning collaborative work. I'm going to go ahead and kick off with welcome introductions from us here at MPHI. My name is Robin Vandermoor, and I'm going to be taking us through this webinar today along with Lauren Lepine, who's also here in the room with me and is helping out with this webinar. And we are both your QI advisors for this collaborative. So if you are a Healthy Families America Early Head Start or Parents as Teachers team that's part of the Michigan Home Visiting Initiative, I, Robin, am your QI advisor. And if you are 32P4 team, is your QI advisor. So we'll be the two people that you'll be communicating with very frequently about your quality improvement. And we're looking forward to getting to know all of you who are newer faces to all of us. For a couple of webinar logistics quickly. So we're asking that you keep your lines muted because, again, we are recording this webinar today. We also have everybody in listen-only mode right now just to minimize background noise, but we will take it off of listen-only mode here shortly so that you can feel free to ask questions. But if we're in listen-only mode and you'd like to ask a question, don't hesitate to send a message through the chat. We are monitoring the chat on a regular basis, and we'd be happy to get the message through there. Or just raise your hand and let us know that you have a question that you'd like to ask, and we will on the lines and let you ask your question. If you could please not put us on hold during the webinar, we would appreciate it. If you do put us on hold, then we hear your hold music, and it's really, really hard to hear everybody else who's on the line. So if you could kind of do that, we would really appreciate it. And we are recording the webinar. In fact, that we have a short time here together today. If your team is on the call, if you could just send a quick message through the chat and let us know that you are on the call and we're able to join the webinar today, that would be wonderful. So we're in some time here this morning talking about the PICCOLO specifically. So we'll start off with talking about the PICCOLO for the Learning Collaborative work. So why we're using the PICCOLO, the materials you have, so on and so forth. We'll kind of really get into the nuts and bolts of the PICCOLO. So we'll talk some about what the PICCOLO instrument is. We'll talk how it was developed. We'll talk what the PICCOLO measures. Have some time for you to practice using the PICCOLO a little bit. We'll have some time to talk about how to interpret the results of the observations that you conduct. We'll provide some tips for use. We have plenty of time for questions and answers, and we do have some time for questions and answers throughout. Starting off, having some conversation about what the PICCOLO is used for our QI Learning Collaborative, the Positive Parenting Practices Collaborative. So each of you received PICCOLO materials either at the grantee meeting or shortly following the grantee meeting. We sent them in the mail to you. So you each have one copy of the user's guide for your team to use, and we'd highly recommend that you take a look at this user's guide. There's a lot of really helpful information in it, and it's a pretty easy read. So for those of you who will be actively using this with families that you're working with, would encourage you to take a look at that user's guide carefully and just a little bit of reading in the user's guide. We also provided you with packs of scoring forms. So you have a pack of 25 scoring forms. Some of you received the 5 extra copies and some of you did not. If for some reason you do not have 5 additional forms in addition to the pack of 25, we will have additional forms available at the May team meeting, and we'll provide you with any additional forms you need at that time. The materials are copyrighted, so we do ask that you don't copy them. So if your team runs out of scoring forms and needs some additional forms, do let us know and we'll get them to you as quickly as possible. We indicated in the message that was sent out prior to the webinar, it'll be helpful for you to have a scoring form to take a peek at today. We're walking through this webinar because we will be doing a little bit of practice and we'll be talking about the tool in general. So being able to take a closer look at the tool will help you out today while we're talking about it. We're asking that you use the PICCOLO with 10 families, so complete PICCOLO observations with 10 families over the course of the collaborative. And you're going to be completing these observations at 3 different time points. So each family should receive a maximum of 3 observations. And I'll get into that piece here a little bit more in a minute. And when you're selecting your 10 families, if it's possible to select families that have a child that's 6 months or older, this tool definitely works a little more easily with children who are a little older in age. So if you're able to select families that have a child 6 months or older, that would be a good family to pick to use the PICCOLO with for the purposes of your collaborative work. If you need to use the PICCOLO with a family who has a child that's under 6 months for 1 or 2 of the observations that you conduct over the period of the collaborative, you can totally do that. So it's not going to be impossible to use that. We'll just ask that you use a condensed version of the PICCOLO. So if you're using it with a child that's younger than 6 months of age, we'll ask that you only use certain items within the domain. So within the affection domain, you would only use items 1, 2, 4, 5, and 7. With the responsiveness domain, you would only use items 1, 2, 5, 6, and 7. Encouragement domain, you would actually skip this one because the items are really much more applicable to older children, so they're going to be things that are hard to see in a much younger infant. And the scale, items 3, 4, and 7 would be applicable. So again, if you need to complete an observation with a child that is 6 months or younger for the first observation or even the second observation, maybe you have to do 2 with that particular family, we ask that you use the condensed PICCOLO assessment. And then when the child is over 6 months of age, go ahead and use the whole tool. So hopefully this will be helpful to those of you who do serve a lot of young infants right now and would want to be able to use this tool with those families. And this information is included in the Excel workbook that you received on 4th tab where you're putting the PICCOLO information. So if you need to have a reference for this information, it is available there as well. Administration time for the PICCOLO. Again, we're asking you to do PICCOLO observations with the 10 families that you select 3 different time points. So the first time point could be observations that were conducted anytime between November 14th, 2016, February 14th, 2017. This will help us get a baseline for the collaborative work that we're doing. And why these time points have a time span is we recognize that, you don't necessarily see families every week. Some of you do, some of you don't, and we want you to be able to space them out and catch families at the appropriate time for their next observation. So that's why we've given you some space to determine when that might work best for you. The second time point, so the second observation that you complete with families, we're going to ask that you do that sometime between March 15th and May 14th. And these time frames, I should say, are lined up with your data submission. So you'll be submitting data as well as your team charters on the 15th of each month. So the time points have been aligned so that they align with submissions being in February, May, and September. The reason why we spaced out the time points is that you're getting started with your QI work and you want the work that you're doing, the change that you're testing to be able to have some effect on the work that you're doing with families, especially those families who you are doing PICCOLO observations with. So you want to get a little bit of time for those changes you're testing to have some kind of effect with the families that you're working with. And you feel free to use more than just the 10 families that doing the PICCOLO observations with for the tests of improvement that you're doing. We're just asking for the 10 observations as a small sample of the greater work that you're doing within your program. And the measures within the measurement strategy are reflective of your whole program. And the third time point would be any time between July 15th and September 14th. Hopefully these are helpful, but those will be the administration times that we're using. And your observations in your Excel workbook that you all received last week. So on the fourth tab of that workbook, there is space for you to record your observations. So there's space for you to record the observations that you conduct for the first time point, second time point, and the third time point. The information that we're asking you to include would be the family's ID number. If you have an ID number already associated with families, that's how you track families in your program, that's great. If you don't, then we would ask that you assign families an ID number. And the reason why we're asking for this is that we don't want to receive any identifiable information on our end, because that would be, kind of breach that family's privacy. So we want you to be able to keep that that data for that particular family, such as names and such. So family ID, the home visitor name of the home visitor that works with that family and is completing the observation, the observation was completed, the child age in months, and scores for each of the scales. So you would simply be transferring the scores from the PICCOLO scoring form that you're using to the Excel work. So we're tracking the observations for this work. So for a moment, and I'm going to see if there's any questions that you might have about the PICCOLO's use for the Learning Collaborative before we really dive into talking about the PICCOLO in and of itself as a tool and what it measures and all of that good information. Questions about the PICCOLO's use for your team's QI Learning Collaborative work. And lines are unmuted, so if you'd like to ask a question, just verbal, please feel free to do so.
This is Leslie from Great Start in Kent. I was just wondering, is there an interactive webinar link? I don't seem to have one.
Could actually get on the webinar? So all you need to do is if you, so there's a button in the email that I sent that says that you can add it to your calendar, and right next door to that there's a blue link that says join now, and if you just click on that, it'll take you directly to the webinar.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm sorry about that confusion. Hearing no questions about the PICCOLO's use for Learning Collaborative, we're going to go ahead and dive into some of the nuts and bolts of the PICCOLO, and we'll open it up here again for questions in it. But I do see that, Jackie, you raised your hand. Do you have a question?
My question is, I'm confused about the Excel workbook. Is that something that we were to have received with packet, or is that something different?
The All workbook, we emailed those out at the end of last week to each team. So it would have gone to whoever we have on the list of main contacts for the team. So
Okay.
If you didn't receive it specifically, you might check and see if anybody else on your team received it. And if for some reason you don't have it, do let us know and we'll be sure to get it to you.
Okay, that was sent in an email. Okay.
Yes, it was sent to an email, and it's specific for your particular program.
Thank you.
Welcome. And I see that there might be another question, another hand raised. We're going to go ahead and move on. We're going to go ahead and mute the lines again just so that we can minimize background noise. But if you have a question, don't hesitate to raise your hand or send it through the chat, and we'll respond as quickly as possible. All right. So when we get into what is the PICCOLO, so its full name is actually quite the mouthful. So it's called Parenting Interactions with Children, Checklist of Observations Linked to Outcomes. So that's what PICCOLO stands for. for. The PICCOLO is a practical observation measure of developmental parenting behaviors that was developed by a team of researchers at Utah State University for a grant that they received from the Administration for Children, Youth, and Families, as well as another grant that they got for Canadian university research from Utah State University. So it was a team of researchers there that developed this particular tool. The tool is strengths-based, and it's intended to measure parenting interactions that predict children's early social, cognitive, and language development. So looking at things like attachment, regulation, and positive social interaction behaviors, exploration, problem solving, and reasoning, and communication, vocabulary, and emergent literacy. The PICCOLO is used to assess developmental parenting. So developmental parenting is really parenting that helps children develop. So developmental parenting isn't always right there with parents. That's really something that you all work hard to help parents develop in their parenting role over time through building parent knowledge, supporting positive parenting skills, interaction, so on and so forth. So, parents need help developing this developmental parenting and the solutions that they use to help their children develop along the developmental trajectory that they're growing on. The PICCOLO can also be used to help guide planning for intervention activities during your home visit. So it'll help you think about what might you like to work on in the next several home visits with families as you're helping support positive parenting practices with the families that you're working with. And overall, it'll help you track program outcomes. So diving a little bit deeper into how the PICCOLO was developed, the tool was developed using data and videos from the Early Head Start Research and Evaluation Project. It's research-based, and it was tested by using longitudinal data from these observations from the Early Head Start Research and Evaluation Project, along with a bunch of archived videos and data that the team at Utah State University had from other research studies that they conducted with families over time. So they did a lot of looking at family interactions with home visitors and with their children, looking at different elements of parenting practices, and developed actually a laundry list of 100 different items that could be assessed to really look at positive parenting practices. In the end, after all of their work, we're able to narrow those down to 29 items total, which are 29 items that you see within the PICCOLO tool today. Did a lot of good work to really kind of get at those most immediate items that you really want to be looking for as someone who's helping support the parent and child, the family unit as a whole, through what you're doing. That can help you think about where you want to do some work with that particular family moving forward to grow their parent knowledge, grow their parenting skills, and help them really be the best parent that they possibly can be. So we're into the PICCOLO. When we think about what it looks like, it's a brief instrument. So there are 4 parenting behaviors that are assessed over time. Those are the 4 domains. So affection, responsiveness, encouragement, and teaching. Those domains, there are 29 items that are spread across. The PICCOLO is intended to be completed with a 10-minute observation, so it's a short observation, and it can be scored in 1 to 2 minutes. So something that doesn't take a whole lot of time to do. It's specific, so it's used with children. So the instrument was developed to be used with children between 10 months and 47 months of age. We're allowing you to use it with kids that are younger than 10 months, so we're recommending that 6 months and above, but if you need to use it with a child that's younger than 6 months, again, you'd want to use the abbreviated version because not all of the items would be applicable to that parent-child interaction with a younger child. Really practical, so it helps guide visit planning. It's real, so observers usually agree on the scoring for each of the items between observers if you have multiple observers looking at a video. And it's valid, so it really helps predict child outcomes. Here that the PICCOLO does have a Spanish version, so the user guide is not available in Spanish, but if for some reason you have the need to use a Spanish version and would like to use a Spanish scoring form, the Spanish scoring form is in the user's guide, and we contacted the folks over at Brooks Publishing who published the Piccolo and let us know that you are welcome to copy the Spanish version from the user's guide if that's something that you need to use with families. So do know if you have Spanish-speaking families that you work with where that's their primary language and you want to use the Spanish version of the tool, that's something that you can copy from the user's guide. So when we think about what the Piccolo measures, there are those four main domains: affection, responsiveness, encouragement, and teaching. So these are the main areas of parent-child interactions that you're going to be looking at with this particular tool. We're going to spend a little bit of time now talking about each of these domains. So the affection domain, affectionate parents express warmth and fondness towards their children, which really helps children feel close and connected to their parents. This is increasing compliance and decreasing tantrums and misbehavior. We know that affection supports children in feeling loved and cared for, and really lays the foundation for that positive relationship between parent and child. And these feelings are established to help support children's emotional and social development. So the affection scale really kind of digs into this particular domain and looks at items that are very specific to affection. So the items on with the domain of affection on the scale are so forth. So the first one is looking at the parent speaks in a warm tone of voice. The second, parent smiles at child. Parent is child. Parent is physically close to the child. Positive expressions with child. Parents interacting with the child. And emotional warmth. So these are the items that you would be looking for in the observation that you're conducting when you're looking particularly at the affection domain. And on the scoring form that you have, really great guidance on what to look for in terms of observation guidelines. So for each item, it gives you some observation guidelines to think about as you're looking for this in the observation that you're conducting. And then there's guidance on the scoring, which we'll get into here in a little bit. In the business domain, we're looking at things like responding to the child's cues, emotions, words, interests, and behaviors. So we know that responsive parents understand what their child needs, the cues that their child provides, such as like facial expressions, sound and words, movements, and parents want to be able to consistently respond to their child in helpful ways. So responsive parents, they tend to have children who are securely attached, which provides a sense of trust and establishes a foundation for the social emotional development that they're working with their child on. Children with a secure attachment tend to be more sociable, they can handle stress and maintain positive relationships going forward in life. Responsive parents also have a great ability to comfort their children when they're in physical distress. They're able to react to their children's actions and then reply to their children's expressions. So responsive parenting also really supports development of exploration and communication with the child. So the scale of the responsiveness domain are very reflective of these pieces of responsive parenting. So those items include parent paying attention to what the child's doing, parent pace or activity to meet child's interests, the parent's visible about the child's change in activities or interests, follows what the child is trying to do, the parent responds to the child's emotions, and the parent looks at the child when the child talks or makes sounds. So those are things that you would be looking for in the observation that you're doing of parent-child interaction when it comes to the responsiveness domain. When we think about encouragement, we're thinking about things like actively supporting the child's exploration, their efforts, their skills, their initiative, the curiosity that they display, their creativity and play. So encouragement really helps involve like letting the child explore, make choices on their own, use beginning abilities of self-control. Parent behaviors that are supportive of children learning how to do new or challenging things on their own are really helpful in the encouragement domain. So parents being encouraging when they're playing together with their child, with their toys, supporting social skills, and their child's cognitive skills as they develop. They help make it more interesting and offer assistance through scaffolding if the child is struggling to get that encouraging piecing for within this domain. So the items on the scale in this domain look closely at what the parent is doing to provide encouragement to their child during the interaction that you're observing. So things such as the parent waits for the child to respond after making a suggestion, urges the child to handle toys, the parent supports the child's choice or activity, the parent supports the child in doing things on his or her own, the parent encourages child's efforts, the parent suggestions to help the child, and shows enthusiasm about what the child is doing. So those are the items that you're looking at when you're doing child interaction observation, and particularly looking at the encouragement domain. Within the PICCOLO is the teaching domain. This is really looking at things like shared conversations and play, cognitive stimulation that happens between the parent and child, explanations that are occurring during the activity or play that the parent and child are engaged in, and questions that are occurring. So teaching involves sharing conversations and playing with children. These interactions really provide cognitive and language stimulation for kiddos. So when we look at how much parents talk to their children and how many different words they use, that's really influencing children's early language development. Encourage their child's interest and curiosity by providing labels for things while they're playing with their child or doing an activity, even before that child can start speaking. So parenting behaviors that are supportive of teaching, so things like describing items, asking good questions, answering questions, explaining things to children, telling stories, sharing books, that really support teaching. So here, the teaching domain and the items within that scale are very much focused on the teaching piece. So those items are: the parent explains reasons for something to a child, the parent activities to extend what the child's doing, the parent repeats or extends the child's words or sounds, labels objects or actions for the child, the parent engages in pretend play with the child, the parent does activities in sequence of steps, so kind of getting at some of that scaffolding to the child. The parent talks to the child about characteristics of objects and asks the child for information. And again, the observational guidelines on the scoring sheet that will be helpful as you're doing these observations with families. Are using this tool with families and observing parent-child interactions, the scoring for each of the items is fairly simplistic, which I think is one of the really nice things about this particular parent-child interaction observation tool. And the guidance that they provide is very helpful in understanding kind of where you would want to go with the scoring. So the scoring is based on 0, 1, or 2. If you provide 0 for an item or score an item at 0, you're scoring 0 because the behavior wasn't observed. So you didn't see that particular item in the interaction that you were observing. And that's okay, but you'd want to assign it a 0 if that behavior wasn't observed. If you see the behavior but only see it very briefly, or you kind of feel that it's something that's urging and the parent is still working on it, then you would score it a 1 for that particular item. If you are, through observation, see a behavior that is definite, it's strong, it's there, the parent is on a frequent basis, would want to give that a 2, clearly, that, you clearly saw that behavior, that was there, that's something that the parent does on a regular basis to support their child's development. Scoring, very simple, 0, 1, or 2 for each of the behaviors. So we're at a time practicing here this morning, which is one of the reasons why we asked you if you could have one of the scoring sheets in front of you. I don't think that you want to actually use the scoring sheet for this practice, so if you have another piece of paper like the webinar slides or a piece of scrap paper by you, you could write your scores down for those pieces. But what we're going to do here is we're going to show you 2 different 1-minute video clips of parent-child interactions, and what we're going to ask you to do is use 2 of the domains to score those video clips. So the first video clip we show you, we are going to have you use the responsiveness domain. So you want to open your scoring booklets to the responsiveness domain, so you can take a look at those items as you watch the video. And what we'll do is we'll play the video, and you simply can just watch the video for this 1 minute. Then after the video concludes, ask that you go through and score the responsiveness domain. And we'll talk about that domain for a little bit, and we'll move into the next video and show you another one. So we're going to play the first video. Pay close attention to this video and look at the items within the responsiveness domain as we're watching this video, so that you can determine sort of what you think this parent-child interaction is displaying in this video when it comes to responsiveness. We're getting an error message on our screen right now. So one thing I'm going to ask is we're going to unmute the lines for a minute, and if you can tell us if you can see the video that we just brought up, that would be really wonderful. We want to make sure that everybody is seeing the screen that brought up.
How to get back to.
Okay, try to go back to the video again, and if you can tell us if you can see the video, that would be really helpful, because we're going to message saying that you may not be seeing the video. Oh. Okay, can everybody see the video that we brought up on the screen? Sorry about that technical challenge there. Really grateful that you can see it. So we're going to go ahead and play this one. You're going to take a look at the items in the responsiveness domain and think about what you're observing in this particular parent-child interaction. Okay, so take a few minutes and go through and determine how you might actually score the responsiveness domain for this particular parent-child interaction that you just saw. I'll give everybody just about a minute, and I'll go through the scoring so that you know how this particular interaction was scored. So for this particular parent-child interaction, the 1-minute clip that we just watched in the responsiveness domain, the way you would through and score this one, if this was an interaction that you were observing, would be item 1, pays attention to what the child is doing, give that a 2, that was clearly visible. Item 2, changes pace or activity to meet the child's interests or needs, again, that would be scored a 2, that was clearly seen in this particular interaction. Item 3 is flexible about the child's change of activities or interests. Again, would score that a 2. That was clearly seen in this 1-minute clip. 4 follows what the child is doing. Score that a 2. Clearly followed what the child was doing in the activity that they were doing with one another, playing with those kitchen toys. Responds to the child's emotion. Again, that would be scored a 2. We could clearly see that in this daughter duo. Item looks at the child when the child talks or makes sounds. Again, we clearly saw this in this video. Mom was clearly looking at daughter while they were interacting and playing with the kitchen toys and the other toys that they had at hand. 7, replies to the child's words or sounds. Again, this would be scored a 2. That was clearly shown there. Mom was definitely conversing. Overall, Mom in this particular video was very attentive. She changed activity with the daughter as they went on, and she was really flexible to changing activities. I should note that it is uncommon to have all 2s in one domain, but this video gives us a good kind of glimpse into what you would be looking for within the responsiveness domain if you do have an interaction with parent and child that really kind of displays each items. And move to the next video clip. And this 1-minute video clip, we want to focus in on the encouragement domain. So you're going to go ahead and look at the items within the encouragement domain while you look at the video clip. And then we'll pause for a few minutes and give you a little bit of time to score it, and then we'll go over the scoring.
Why screaming? Can you do it? Can you do it? You can do it. Okay, now put it back. Put it back. Oh, it's better. Tickle finger. Here, put your foot up. On. On. Oh, almost got it. Oh. Put it on. Other foot. Now take it off. Let's put this back on. Take it off. You can do it. You can do it.
All right, so take a few minutes, look at the items in the encouragement domain again, and down how you might score those items for this particular 1-minute video clip. All right. So score encouragement domain for this particular 1-minute clip that we just took a peek at, this is how you score it. So for the first item, waits for child's response after making a suggestion. That's clearly there in this video, or this clip, so we set it 2. I encourages child to handle toys. While there weren't any toys in this particular video, they were using the child's socks as the sort of activity that was and for this particular parent-child interaction, and she was clearly encouraging the child to handle the socks. So again, that was there clearly. So a 2. A 3 supports to making choices. Again, that was clearly here in this particular video. So we give that a 2. Child in doing things on his or her own. Mom was very supportive in the child taking on and off the socks and kind of getting the hang of that particular routine. So again, that would be clearly there, so give that a 2. Really encourages child's efforts. Again, we give that one a 2. And something to note here is that this is a little bit different than praise. So, you know, this is something that you'd be looking for while the child is still doing something. So, you know, when the parent is commenting in this video and saying things like, you know, good job, and encouraging the child, those are definitely items that could be counted for this particular item. For suggestions to help the child. For this one, we would actually score probably a 1. This would be kind of an emerging behavior that parent has. She offered a couple of suggestions here and there, but it wasn't necessarily clearly prominent in this particular video clip. So that would be something that, you know, mom is probably working and is emerging. So give that one a 1 for barely. And then it says 7 shows enthusiasm about what the child is doing. That was clearly there in this video, so we get that one a 2. In this video, she was very willing to interact with the child. She didn't take the socks off for him. She let him do it and really encouraged him to take his socks on and off and work on that. And she showed a lot of enthusiasm in those interactions. So really kind of getting that child into that routine of putting socks on and taking socks off. So 2 quick video clips were helpful, and this would be a way that we would encourage you to just give the tool a couple of quick runs before you go out and do a parent-child interaction assessment, a 10-minute one with families that you're working with. You know, you can hop on YouTube and look for quick video clips that you'd be able to watch and kind of go through and practice using the items in school, the tool. When you do your 10-minute interaction observations, you're going to be scoring all 4 domains, not just one domain in particular. So you do want to get comfortable using the full tool, but it can be kind of nice to start off with one domain at a time as you kind of get comfortable with the various items that are within that domain and comfortable with the observation guidelines that are provided on the scoring sheets that you have. So hopefully it was helpful to do a little bit of practice here together today. We're going to talk a little bit about how to interpret the results, some helpful tips for use, and then open it up for any other questions that you have that we can be helpful here today. So when you're thinking about the PICCOLO observations that you're doing and how to interpret the results, one of the things that you'll need to do is once you've scored each item within each domain, you'll want to add all of the items within the domain for a total domain score. And there's a place at the bottom of the scoring sheet for you to note the total score for each of the domains. And that total score for each of the domains is what you're going to share through your Excel workbook for the parent-child interactions that you're completing as part of your work in this QI Learning Collaborative. High scores, so 2s on items as strengths, and strengths that you'll really want to share with the parent and talk about with the parent. And we'll give you some helpful tips for doing that here in a minute. Areas where you can work to continue to support parenting behaviors, and these are areas where you can consider, work that you're doing with that parent at home visits that occur after that observation, and ways that you can support developing that parenting knowledge, parenting skills, and really parents' abilities to interact with their child in a positive way so they can grow their parenting practices as they work with you through the home visiting services that you're providing. Truly, the PICCOLO really tells us a couple of different things about parenting. It tells us what the parents can do to support their child's development. Because you're doing the observations and the parent knows that you're doing the observations, it really tells you about what the parent believes is important to do with their child. Parents are going to want to show you things that they really feel like are important to do with their child to support their child's development through the interactions that you are observing with them. Parents are also going to do what's comfortable, what they're comfortable doing in front of others. So, when you let them know that you're going to be doing this interaction, those are things that you're going to see through those parents because they want to show you what they're proud that they're able to do with their child. And they're also going to really show you what they know how to do with their child. So this will help you think about where you can continue to work with that parent to grow and support their parenting knowledge and skills over time. So when it comes to talking about PICCOLO results with parents, there's a couple of tips that we wanted to provide you. So the first being that I just briefly talked about is really that focus on strengths. So describe what they do, praise them, tell them about what you really observed and what they're doing really well. Some parents will be really particularly strong in one domain or another, and you really want them to know that, and you want to encourage them with all the efforts that they're putting forward and emphasize where they're strongest. When you're sharing the results with parents, you do want to be careful with parents who might be anxious about their parenting. They might be afraid of being judged, or they might be distrustful. I think that you all work very, very hard to develop strong relationships with the families that you're working with. So hopefully this will be a really great conversation starter with families and ways for parents to think about where they might want to work to improve their parenting skills and to let you know those things so that those are items that you can plan for upcoming home visits to work on with the parent to really help support the parent, meet the parent where they are. But you definitely want to talk about the results of the assessment with the parent, let them know where their strengths lie so that they understand where they're strong, and then also have an understanding of things that you're working on together through your time at home visits. Tips when you are conducting observations, you want to tell the parents that you're doing the PICCOLO observation, and you want to be flexible about it. So, for example, if you go to do the home visit and you're thinking that you're going to do the PICCOLO observation that day, and the child's sleeping for some reason, or it's just a great time for the family to do it, be flexible about that and reschedule if you need to. And that's why we gave you some bigger time spans so that you have some flexibility about when these observations are completed. When you're doing the observations, you want the parent to be doing something with their child. You can offer an activity for them to do with their child, or they might already be doing something as a part of the home visit, something that you've planned, so you could do the observation with that activity. Whatever kind of feels right, but we did provide some suggestions of different types of activities that you might have the parent do with the child if you're looking for something for them to do while you're doing the observation. Obviously want to do the observation where the family is comfortable doing the observation, so let them make that choice about where that observation actually happens in the home. I know that one of the things you'll notice when you dig into the user's guide a little bit more is that the user's guide highly recommends that you videotape all observations that you do. I wanted to let you all know that that's not something that we're asking you to do for this particular collaborative. If that's something that you wanted to do, then you could most definitely do it and follow some of the tips that are provided in the user's guide, but that's not something that's required of this collaborative. So know that you aren't expected to videotape the observations that are happening with the families that you're using the PICCOLO with. you're interested in learning any more about the piccolo, or you would like to do some more practice with the piccolo, or you think that this is something that your program may continue to use beyond the Life of the Learning Collaborative, or is using beyond the Life of the Learning Collaborative, there is a Piccolo training DVD that's available, and we gave you the web link for it so that you can go and check it out if it's something that you'd like to. It's a really great DVD. It has a lot of clips on it, so there are some of the 1-minute clips that we showed you today, as well as a few others. There are some 5-minute clips on that DVD, as well as 10-minute clips. So there are clips that you can practice with, and there's a more in-depth training video. So if this is something that you think you might be using in the long run, we would definitely encourage you to check out some of the other materials that come along with the piccolo if you think this might be something your team is going to continue using within your room. That was a lot of information in a short period of time, but hopefully a little bit more helpful than the brief conversation that we were able to have at the grantee meeting just over a week ago. So I'm going to take a little bit of time now to pause and see if there are questions from any of you on the line pertaining to the piccolo that you would like to ask for the good of the group today. The lines are unmuted, so if you would like to ask a question, you can feel free to do so verbally, or if you prefer to ask it through the chat, you're welcome to send it through the chat as well. Surely someone must have a question. I couldn't have been that clear.
We will get a copy of this because I missed a couple of the first couple slides. I came a little late.
You'll definitely, so I sent out a copy of the slides yesterday, but we'll send out another email a little later today with the webinar recording and the slides again. So if you want to watch it again, you're more than welcome to, and you can also share it with team members who weren't able to attend today, but we'll be doing some piccolo observations so that they have the opportunity to take the webinar as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, it looks like Amber, you have a question about on the instructions. There's one about quiet parent comes up. What is a quiet parent? Can you tell me a little bit more about what you're looking at and what Dave?
Can you hear me, Robin?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So in also under the the piccolo is at the top, and then it says instructions right underneath, and it says look closely to see behaviors in a quiet parent. And so we were just curious about exactly quiet parent means.
Oh,
or what we're looking.
I'm really certain what they're referring to here is if the parent is fairly quiet in their interactions and they're not very talkative in their interactions, then you would you'd want to continue to look kind of closely at that interaction and see what you can glean from interaction. Hopefully, like you saw in the videos, the parent doing something with their child that's fairly interactive, and you'll hear a lot during that. But I think it's just kind of getting at when you're doing the observation, you want to get observation and observe very closely, so not to really pay attention to what's going on and think about what's going on kind of after the effect when you're going through and scoring. So one of the things you'll find yourselves doing is when you're doing these observations, especially when you get a little bit more used to the tool, is you'll watch the whole observation and then after the observation quickly go through and kind of score the tool afterwards. You may have comfort doing this in other ways, for example, kind of working through the tool while the observation is going on. It's totally up to you, but it's just getting at the fact that you really want to kind of keep a careful eye on the observation so you are picking up as much as possible and can respond to as many items as possible based on what you saw with that particular parent and child.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for asking that question. Last questions for today? Well, you know how to find us, and please do not hesitate to reach out to myself or Lauren. We are here to help and support in all of your work for the Learning Collaborative. So if you have additional questions about the PICCOLO or additional questions about any of the Learning Collaboratives that we can be helpful with, please reach out and let us know how we can be supportive of the work that your team's doing. We're excited to hear how you like the PICCOLO, how this works for you. Again, really think that this is a great way to observe those parent-child interactions and collect some data that you can use to inform the work that you're doing with families. We hope that you find the tool useful for the work that you're all doing with families. With that, we are just about at time for the day, so I'm going to go ahead and close out. But again, we will send out the webinar recording a little later today once it posts to our site. Sometimes it takes a little while for the recording to appear, but we'll send it out along with those PowerPoint slides again. And please share that widely with your teams as you need to, and let us know if you have additional questions as you're starting to work with the PICCOLO. Thank you all so much for your time. Hope you stay warm on this cold and snowy day, and we'll look forward to talking to you soon.
Thank you. Thank you.